Happy Friday the 13th, everyone, in December. Now, Friday the 13th is typically thought of as maybe a summer horror film, but here we are, because it is Friday the 13th. Now, today we are going to talk about this recent Arrow 4K UHD release of Friday the 13th. But this isn't the original Friday the 13th. This is the reimagining or the remake, sorta, that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Now, I previously obtained a copy of this film in Blu-ray form from Shout Factory. Now, this was part of this really badass set of all the Friday the 13th movies to date. Now, 2009 is the last Friday the 13th movie that they've been able to make. There's been a rights issue that's been tied up in court for years, and it's very frustrating because anyone who's wanting to see more Friday the 13th, see more Jason Voorhees on screen, it's not going to happen until they get this whole thing settled. But it looks like it might be happening maybe soon. So this 2009 remake stars Jared Padalecki from Supernatural. Most people probably know that he played Sam on the show Supernatural. I'm a big fan of this show, but it was odd in 2009, in that kind of time period during hiatus from the show in between seasons, both him and his co-star Jensen Ackles acted in two remakes or reimaginings of different slasher horror films. Jared Padalecki, he's in Friday the 13th here, playing a very similar character to Sam Winchester. A little different, and we'll talk about that more here in a bit. But Jensen Ackles played the main character in the My Bloody Valentine remake, which is pretty solid as well. But we're gonna talk about this. This is a very nice looking Arrow release. I really like this new cover design for this film, and we're going to take a look more at the actual release here in just a bit. But let's talk a little bit about the plot. It's a slasher about Jason Voorhees, and he kills teenagers. but this remake, I first saw it in the movie theater in 2009 when it came out, and it was kind of an odd thing when I saw it. I did enjoy the film, but at the same time, I thought it didn't quite, to me, feel like a Friday the 13th film. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it at the time, but maybe I can now. I don't think it's still, when you're watching it, it doesn't quite seem like Jason, but Jason's actually very menacing in this one. He often is, but this one he's very, very very hulky, and when he appears in certain instances. Now, in this one, unlike most of the others, he seems to be more territorial. And here's the thing that happens, I think, with a plot, that it's cool, but it also kind of makes it seem less summer campish. So at the beginning of the film, the very beginning of the film, during the credits or right before the credits, I think it's during when the opening credits are coming on, there's like this black and white sequence that takes place in 1980. 1980 is when the original film was released, and it kind of shows some of the scenes a little bit from the first one, with different actors playing Jason's mom. Jason's mom, spoiler from those who haven't seen the first one, Jason's mom is the killer in the first movie, and Jason doesn't appear in the film until the very end, which may or may not be a dream sequence. He comes out of the water and grabs the main girl in a boat and pulls her into the water. But here, Jason's mom, you see her, she's the killer from the first one. She's confronting the last counselor. She considers them all to be responsible for her son Jason's death in the lake. And the last counselor has a machete, and she chops off Jason's mom's head, and then she leaves. And in this particular version of the 2009 remake, you see Jason as a kid come up and sees his mom dead, and he's all deformed looking. Apparently, he either didn't die, or he's a spirit or something, or maybe he's a demon or some kind of manifestation. But really, we don't need to know what he is exactly, because we don't want the mystery to get ridiculous. So, but he is there, and then it cuts to present day time, which in this film is 2009. So it is it's not necessarily a remake, because it shows a little bit of the 1980, but it kind of like takes what happens in the original Friday the 13th. It's more like the 2018 Halloween, when they kind of rebooted the whole thing. They basically ignored all the movies in between the first one and the 2018 version, and they brought Jamie Lee Curtis back. It kind of does it like that, but it doesn't quite do it like that. It doesn't bring back any of the actors from the previous movie or the characters from the previous movie. They were at some point going to have the Tommy Jarvis character in this film. Tommy Jarvis character is one of the few reoccurring characters in this series, other than Jason and Jason's mom. But he appears in the fourth, fifth, and sixth one, played by different actors every time. In the fourth one, he's played by Corey Feldman, and he plays him as he's fairly young in this one. He's a kid, and he ends up killing Jason at the end. The fifth one, I'm not sure who the actor who plays him in that one, but he ends up in a psychiatric type of home, and he's teenager or young adult in that one, and he's the fifth one's the one where Jason isn't in it. Someone else is acting like they're Jason. But then the sixth one, he's in it again, and he's played by Tom Matthews. Now Tom Matthews was in some other horror films like Return of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead Part 2, playing similar characters in both, but different characters. Here they wanted to kind of bring that character back, but then I guess they changed their mind or weren't able to get the rights to it. But Jared Padalecki's character is kind of similar to that character, but he's also very similar to Sam Winchester in Supernatural. So back to the plot. After when it goes to present day, you got like a group of teenagers out camping near Crystal Lake. Now, Crystal Lake is in this series has been shut down since the 1980 massacre by Jason's mom. But it's been shut down, and in this one, Jason's been living in there. He's got tunnels under the cabins, and he's kind of been living in the cabins, or really more under in the tunnels, which and this one goes to great lengths to almost like make Jason make more sense. But the more sense you try to make out of Jason, the less it works, I think, because like in the previous ones, he just appears in places suddenly. He kind of appears here too, but then they kind of think they're going to throw some tunnels under everything, and that's how he gets from there to there really quick. But sometimes he'll appear in odd places, like up on top of a house or something. Like how did he get up there so quick? That sort of thing. But it's pretty scary that he can move in an odd way anyway. But here they try to explain some of that with tunnels under the ground. But anyway, so there's this group of people out camping near there, and two of the guys have caught on to some marijuana that's been planted, and they weren't trying to find it, but they eventually do find it. But then Jason doesn't like them finding the marijuana, and he kills one of them. He ends up killing all of them except for one girl who looks kind of like his mom, and she actually finds a locket that belonged to Jason's mom that had a picture of him as a kid and her and the mom, and she looks similar to the mom as a younger version of the mom, and so he I guess he kind of thinks that she might be his mom, but he takes her and he I guess he locks her up in the tunnels, and which is kind of an odd thing to do. But now this character ends up being Jared Padalecki's character's sister, and he comes looking for her. But when he comes to look for her, he runs into and this is like 6 weeks later, he runs into a new batch of teenagers at a gas station, and including one girl who's got a kind of a boyfriend that they're kind of not getting along too good. He owns, or his parents, or either he does, owns this big cabin up there, but she is his girlfriend, but he's kind of being a dick, and so she's kind of like not that into him. But this other girl who's pretty hot, one of their friends, is kind of into him. She kind of likes him being a jerk. But then there's a big group of new kids that he meets at this gas station, and then he kind of like makes a connection with her. But he's showing pictures of his sister. He's going around, like, has flyers of his sister, trying to find his sister. He runs into the town cop, played by Richard Burgi. And the town cop's like, what are you doing here? We already investigated this whole thing. Your sister and her friends are nowhere to be found. Which I thought was kind of weird. I mean, how much investigation did they do? If they went out there to the Crystal Lake cabins and they didn't find the tents, they didn't find the bodies, they didn't find Jason's underground secret lair or any evidence inside of the cabins, I'm sure. Because Jason doesn't seem like he's somewhat careful. Maybe he is very careful. I don't know. But he does seem to be... But you think if the cops went out there to investigate, he would have just slaughtered them all. But maybe they just didn't investigate. They're like, we did it. We did our job. It's all good. because later on, and this is a bit of a spoiler, the cop does show up at the house and Jason just kills him. So that makes me think that if the cops went there to investigate, he would have just slaughtered them all, wouldn't even thought twice about it, would just killed them. That's how, because he's very territorial about this cabin area, and anybody who gets near it, he just kills them. But he actually branches out, and I don't know why some of the teenagers from this group end up going out on the lake on a boat. And by the way, there's a pretty good bit of nudity in this film and some sex scenes. But like one of the girls, she's water skiing. For some reason, she goes topless water skiing, and I guess Jason doesn't care for that. That's probably what triggers him to kill him, because otherwise, like, you know, they're on the lake and he decides to go. He shoots the guy driving the boat with a crossbow, and then he ends up like, and then she gets ran over by the boat by mistake, and then he ends up she goes under this dock, and he ends up taking a knife and putting it through the dock into her head, and then pulling her up to the dock, and you see her boobs again, and then she like slides off the knife. It's pretty gruesome, really. Then this film was directed by, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Marcus Nispel. Now he previously had directed a remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that's why they kind of went for him for this remake, which I think he does a good job here. I think there's a lot of atmosphere here that works very well. And it's a lot better remake than I remembered it. But back to what happened. So anyway, so he's just killing these new teenagers who are there that are renting a cabin. But the only reason I guess he eventually goes back to their cabin is the girl who kind of the girl who's got the boyfriend who was at the gas station, who kind of started talking to Jared Padalecki's character. He shows up at their house, not knowing it's their cabin. He shows up knocking on the door, and then she gets in a fight with her boyfriend, and she ends up going with him to help him go look for his sister. And they go back to Crystal Lake, and from there, Jason follows them back to the cabin that they're at, and ends up like starting to kill all of those guys. So it makes sense why he goes there. And I guess that he kills the girl on the lake because he's out there going topless on the lake, and he's like, I don't want anything to do with any of that. Now, there are a pretty good bit of sex scenes in this film, and there are two cuts on this release, and this one only has the killer cut, what they call in it, and the killer cut includes some extra long sex scenes. They go on for a long time, not like a long time, but longer than you would most of the time feel comfortable watching. I don't mind watching them. I was fine with most people, longer than most people would feel comfortable watching them. I didn't have a problem with myself, but I think that apparently the test screening audiences thought that it was a little much. And there's even a rumor that Michael Bay may have walked out because he thought the sex scenes were a bit much. But there are some. There's two fairly elongated sex scenes, and there's a pretty good bit of female nudity, especially in the unrated cut. In the first sex scene, they aren't able to finish having sex, and in the second one, they actually do. So it's kind of it was nice that they were able to finish in the second one. It's very frustrating sometimes when they're not able to. I guess it's kind of like when you see somebody about to eat something and then they don't get to eat it. But it is nice that they were able to. In the second one, it was like the asshole boyfriend ended up having sex with the other girl at the cabin that wasn't his girlfriend, and she even comes in and she's knocking on the door, and then they don't come out until they finish having sex. They're like, oh, we're just gonna go ahead and finish this thing. But then Jason sees them having sex through the window, but he doesn't come in there and kill them yet. I guess he can't get in there, but he's thinking about it. He definitely wants to go in there and kill them while they're having sex, but he can't get to them. He gets them later though. But but anyway, so eventually it comes down to Jared Padalecki finds his sister, and it becomes him fighting Jason at the end, a lot like Sam Winchester. And the last kind of 10 to 15 minutes of it is a kind of long fight between those, and not a lot of suspense because you kind of think these characters were probably going to get out of there, especially after what's all happened. So let's take a look at this release here. This is an Arrow release, 4K, very nice slip cover. Here's the inside one. Very thick box here, and it's got some goodies we're going to take a look at. Now, there are 2 discs. A lot of times Arrow Video, including here, they don't usually include a Blu-ray disc. This one includes 2 4Ks, the 4K of the theatrical cut and a 4K of the killer cut or the extended cut. Here is a postcard to Crystal Lake, and here's a little booklet Also included here is a poster. Now, in another release, Arrow release I got recently, there was a little postcard in there that showed Jason X. Apparently, they're going to be releasing Jason X and the other one. What was it called? Jason Goes to Hell through Arrow Video in 4K UHD. And I thought the Scream Factory one was the last version I was ever going to buy of these Friday the 13th films, but I guess I was wrong because now Arrow is releasing them in 4K, and they look, at least this one looks very good. And we'll talk about that transfer here in just a minute. Now the minute is up. We're going to talk about the transfer. The transfer here. Now I did take a look here at this Blu-ray. Now this Blu-ray does not look very good. Oftentimes you see people's faces are kind of like soft focus. There's just a lot of wear and tear on here. Now, this was a movie that was shot on film. This transfer looks very terrific. It kind of makes me think there might be some DNR, some digital noise replacement of work here, but it looks very good. The blacks look very, very deep here, and I don't see a lot of film grain. I had to look pretty hard, but sometimes you can see some film grain here and there. It's fairly tight, but it's not like you're looking through a mountain of film grain to try to watch the film. It is a 2009 film, which isn't necessarily that old as some of these older ones, but it looks really friggin' terrific here in 4K, especially if you look at this Blu-ray. I highly recommend, if you like this movie, I recommend you almost have to upgrade it just for this transfer. It looks so much better. And now most of the time, and other than the daytime scenes look very nice. Their skin tones look very natural. Once you get into the nighttime scenes, which takes up most of the film, they kind of lean towards a blue. And the interior nights lean more towards like a orange sort of color. Some of them very orange, but it all works very well. And I didn't see a lot of problems within this transfer. I think they did a damn good job on this transfer, and for that transfer alone. And this packaging is awesome, by the way, too. But for that transfer alone, I'd recommend this particular copy for this particular release put out by Arrow Video. And I'm sure they're going to do a bang-up job on Jason X and also Jason Goes to Hell in the near future. In the meantime, you can get those films in this set by Scream Factory. Now I'm going to go ahead and rate this film. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. I really like the film. It is one of the stronger Friday the 13th movies, but it almost doesn't quite feel like Friday the 13th because of the changes. They try to make it too ultra realistic in some areas. It is quite scary sometimes, but it gets a little tedious at the end with the cat and mouse chasing when the last few characters probably aren't going to die, especially because the main character is Sam Winchester. Not really, but he's played by Jared Padalecki, who plays Sam Winchester. I actually kind of like it that he doesn't die, but at the same time, there isn't a lot of suspense at the end. But I do like most Friday the 13th, you don't have reoccurring characters because Jason has a tendency to kill everybody. If he doesn't kill them in the movie that he's in, he kills them at the beginning of the next one. He'll do that sometimes, especially like in Friday the 13th Part 2. I'm going to give Arrow a 4-star, maybe 4.5 stars for their release here. They did a damn good job on this transfer. I really like the way that this cover looks. Everything is fantastic here. They even included like the poster and all that. Very, very, I guess you would call this a kind of collector's edition release. And this has a HDR in it as well. Now, they were going to make a sequel to this movie, but they lost the rights to it eventually before they were able to get that out. I would have liked to have seen a sequel and seen what they could have done with it. Now, it's been a long time since I saw this film in the theater, and honestly, I didn't remember it quite that well as I remembered. I kind of maybe was mixing it up with some of the other Friday the 13th, especially like I think Freddy versus Jason, like some of the stuff from Freddy versus Jason, like the cornfield stuff with the keg is and all that. For some reason I thought it happened in this one, but this one was a lot different than I remembered it. Even though some scenes I did remember, I remembered like Sam from Supernatural being in it, but I didn't remember some of the other characters and the in some of the other interactions, which some of them are pretty good. I think the cast of characters here the actors are all fairly well cast and likable in their, or if they're supposed to be unlikable, they're unlikable in their parts. very 2009 kind of look going here. It doesn't even look really 2009 to me. Doesn't seems like yesterday, but it doesn't look very dated as far as that. You have less cell phone stuff going on. I think now it's like when you make a movie that people have their cell phones in their face most of the time. But anyway, let me know what you think about this movie. If you haven't done so already, if you go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel. Happy Friday the 13th. I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.